Good morning, everyone. This is John Kogan. I am the CEO of Performative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. First, I would like to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar entitled Expanding Finance's Strategic Role, How to Use Analytics to Align Your Business and Drive Success. Business analytics is at the forefront of technology investments in 2012. Companies are looking to analytics to provide competitive advantage by enabling better, faster, more consistent decisions throughout their organizations. Finance is well positioned to lead this charge and can capitalize on this opportunity to expand its role far beyond FP&A and accounting. To succeed in this effort, finance professionals will need to identify and structure the mission, metrics, processes, and users in order to deliver impactful BI results. In this webinar, Paul Stalin, co-founder of Burst, explores how finance can use analytics to partner with business and drive results while maintaining the accuracy of financial information, forecasts, and budgets across departments. A few items before we get started. First off, I would like to thank Burst for helping us make this event possible. Everything we do at Performative is at no cost to our users, and it's through the generosity of sponsors like Burst that we're able to bring these programs to you at no cost. So a great thank you to Burst. Next up, a quick welcome to Performative. To those of you who are new to Performative, we're the largest and fastest growing online resource for senior corporate finance, treasury, accounting, and related professionals. We're an ad-free, noise-free community of more than 500,000 CFOs, controllers, treasurers, and related professionals. What we do on Performative is very simple. We are a knowledge-based resource and an online peer network. So people come on, they find information that they need, and if they don't find it, they ask questions, and they typically get responses from their peers. It's a wonderful resource, extremely quick way to get real-world answers to questions that you might have. And all of it's completely free and noise-free. And by noise-free, we mean there's no ads on the website. No one's allowed to self-promote. It's just folks like you asking questions and getting answers. So check it out at performative.com. Next up, we have a few notes on today's event. A link to today's presentation and a video of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours. And in fact, today's presentation is already posted at performative.com/resources. So if you want it, it's there. Second, many folks are here for CPE credits today. In order to actually get the CPE credits, you will have to answer 3 polling questions as we ask them. Those will show up during today's program, and even if you're not here for CPE credit, we'd love you to take a shot at answering the questions. They're more statistical in nature, and we will share the results at the end of today's webinar so everyone can see where everyone else stands with regards to these questions, which is usually very interesting. So we invite everyone to answer these questions, but if you're here for CPE credits, you really need to. Please ask questions. We want this to be an interactive session today. The last part of the webinar will be Q&A. So if you have any questions at any time, ask them via the question area in your GoToWebinar control panel. All the questions, just like the polling questions, are anonymous. So no one will see what you're asking or who's asking. I will simply read off the questions, and our speaker today will do his level best to answer them. So feel free to ask at any time. Finally, when we are done with the webinar and we shut it down, you will be asked to take a short survey regarding the webinar. We always want to do better the next time, so please let us know how we did and what we can do better. Also, in that short survey, which takes all of 60 seconds, we will make it very easy if you want us to help connect you with today's speaker. We're more than happy to do that. It's a click of a mouse button. Okay, we have a number of objectives for today's event. They are all, unsurprisingly, revolving around the area of analytics and how you can use data within your organization and help your other business users make the most of your company's data for analytics and making better decisions. All right, so enough of John. Let's get on to today's speaker, Paul Stalin. It's my pleasure to present. He is the Vice President of Customer Success and co-founder of Burst. Paul is responsible for ensuring customer success across the customer lifecycle and oversees Burst's product management, professional services, support, education, and operations. Previously, Paul built and managed Siebel's sales analytics product line, overseeing its growth from start to over $40 million in revenue. Paul holds a BS from Yale, a master's from MIT in electrical engineering, and an MBA from Stanford, where he was an R.J. Miller Scholar. Paul, it's my pleasure to have you on this morning. Thanks so much, and please take it away.
Great. Thank you, John, and thank everyone for joining us today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to chat with you a little bit about a topic that I care deeply about, which is helping companies drive more insight and make better decisions. We're going to talk through a little bit today, and please ask questions as we go. I know we'll address them at the end, but this is intended to be, a time for you to A, hear my thoughts on the topic, but B, I'd love to hear your questions and turn this into a relatively open session. But again, it'll be a little bit more towards the end. So we'll talk through a little bit about the goal, some of the challenges companies face in turning, kind of data into action and insight. I'll walk through a maturity framework that kind of I've seen over the last, decade plus in the business, more in terms of where companies are and their ability to turn data into action and insight. How you can make progress, some of the best practices that I've seen, and give you just a couple examples of what I mean, and show some of the impact that you can have for those companies that are doing this well. And obviously we'll wrap up and turn it over to you folks for questions. So, I've been in the software space and the analytics space for a long time. This chart always looks similar, but the numbers on the left keep getting ridiculously huge. I'm sure, 5, 10 years from now, we'll be looking at a similar chart, but the 2011 will be the tiny little bar on the left. In general, and this is nothing new, but the amount of data that we as a society and an economy, the amount of data that we're tracking for transactions, for how people are engaging in applications and kind of what's happening out there is just exploding. I mean, there's more and more data capturing more and more information about more and more things that we do in terms of buying, selling, talking to people, activities, contacts, and presents both a tremendous opportunity but also a lot of challenges, right? If you can actually understand and use data well, the reason Zynga was the leading online game company is that they figured out a way to track which hoe people were buying on Farmville and be able to turn that into revenue better. They were just smarter about turning that into a business. But there's a tremendous growth in data, tremendous challenge as these scales keep getting bigger and bigger. Companies are always struggling with how to do this. And we'll talk about some of the ways that I've seen work well for this and some of the value of doing so. So in general, that volume of data is a tremendous opportunity and a challenge. Fundamentally, as our economy has gotten a lot faster in general, information moves a lot faster, communication's a lot faster, the pace of business is a lot faster. That places a lot of burden on kind of the management team and decision makers in every organization to be able to quickly kind of gather, look at, understand data, and make better decisions. So not only does the business move quickly, you can respond quickly. This pace is interesting in a couple of ways, because it's not only the environment that's changing pretty quickly, but how you want to manage your business, the types of things you want to do, the decisions you need to make, things that become strategic are fairly dynamic. And so your requirements of how you analyze the data, not just the pace of the data, but the way that you analyze the data similarly is going to change very quickly. The requirements of what you need to be analyzing this year for your business are very different than last year, and they can be very different next quarter, just as the universe and the general economic pace has gotten to a very, very high clock speed. And you need pretty current data. You can't be months and months behind. You need to be looking at data that reflects your business very recently. If not, right now. This is so that's one challenge. One of the other challenges is basically getting a real understanding of how your business is operating in that kind of environment and being able to diagnose, what the roadblocks are, what the challenges are, and to find out, where you're doing well so you can replicate best practices requires you to have kind of a more holistic view of your business. The old, stovepipe departmental model of business is long gone. It's just too slow. It may be very efficient, but it's not very effective. The pace is too slow. So creating that kind of more integrated organization requires a much more holistic view of your business, and it requires that you not get a printed report once a month that's just a spreadsheet that you then have to go ask what's going on. You're going to have to be able to not only combine multiple data systems from multiple departments into that holistic view, you're going to need to be able to interact with it and dig into it to figure out what's going on, slice and dice, and provide kind of a mechanism for zeroing in on those areas that are problems, those areas that are opportunities, those areas that are bright spots, and to be able to do so very quickly, right? So end users can do this without needing to wait 3 weeks when they say, actually, this is very interesting, what's going on here, and having to wait 2 weeks for someone to come back with a report to show you something is not going to be fast enough. So you need a much more interactive way to kind of browse and go through that data. So this brings us to our first polling question, so I will hand it back over to John.
Great, thank you very much. So this is the first of 3 polling questions we've got today. I'm launching it right now. And this is actually, of course, a very fitting question given today's subject. And as I mentioned, we will revisit this afterwards when we get into the Q&A. So if you're here for CPE credit, you need to answer this polling question. But even if you're not, take 10 seconds, please take a quick look and let us know. And then we'll all see where one another sits when we get to the Q&A section today. Remember, this is all anonymous, so no names will be shown to protect the innocent. Also, a quick reminder to ask questions via the question area of your GoToWebinar control panel at any time, and we will make sure that we get to those questions either today, if we have enough time, or online, or directly between you and Paul after the event. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this one down, and Paul, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Oops, let me page up here. Okay, good. I have control here. All right, so we talked about this a little bit in terms of creating a holistic view and trying to get kind of a more comprehensive view of your business to really understand, because how these departments interact and how you can serve your customers, how you can deliver revenue, how you can manage your cash. All these things are highly intertwined, and the more intertwined they are, which is good for speed, the more you need to be able to kind of consolidate them into a single view. And there's a lot of challenges around this. Because in most cases, most companies have, multiple data systems, be it HR, you've got a CRM system, you might have, ERP on how you're delivering kind of the back-end delivery piece, you might have your financials as well. A lot of people now have some cloud applications, so maybe you're, using an expense management piece, or you're doing, HR benefits that way, or hiring, who knows. FP&A, there's a lot of systems that you can have kind of around this that all feed into how the business is performing, and obviously that all ultimately impact kind of the finances and the financial performance of the company. So there's a fairly significant technical challenge required for you to create this integrated view, where you're going to have to be able to integrate data from multiple systems and transform it so that it's kind of more of a single source of truth, right? Getting things into that one place where things are holistic in nature. They're one number, so you don't have people fighting over the number's 12 in one department, the other department swears it's 11. You can kind of get people on the same page, speaking the same language, and this is a pretty big hurdle that companies have to overcome to be able to take full advantage of the data that's available today and really turn it into something that's going to be actionable, where you're making the right decisions for the total business, and not just things that look like they might be the right idea in one department but are actually going to negatively impact others. The other piece is, once you have that integrated view, there's a significant challenge in, and this is more of a business challenge, turning that data into insight. There's going to take a number of steps. There's going to be a number of business conversations. What metrics really matter? How are we going to create? What is a lead? What is a customer? Agreeing on some of the key kind of business entities. How you're going to analyze them. How you're going to do this in a manner that allows people to actually understand what's happening in the business, not just read the data, but actually understand what it means. And this is, technology does enable this process, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the key steps in there, but fundamentally this is far more of a business challenge. This is where a lot of companies struggle, frankly, being able to take data and turn it into kind of a business enabling thing rather than just massive numbers. And we'll talk a little bit about the opportunities that presents for finance, specifically in a little bit here. But there's one department that grooms people to turn data and figure out how it drives business, and certainly finance does that very well. So the payoff, if you can actually do those two things, if you can create that kind of single source of truth, if you can create that comprehensive view of the business and help your decision makers turn that kind of combined view into actual insight, you're going to get much better decisions, right? The goal at the end of the day is not to be smarter when you go home. The goal is to make better decisions, take better actions, and really do things that are going to drive meaningful, impactful results for the organization. If you're doing this right, you should be able to really maximize your revenue. You should be able to really drive profitability. You should be able to drive operational performance and efficiencies. You should be able to increase cash flow. And certainly that's going to help you as an organization maintain much better financial health. And one of my favorite dashboards I've ever seen for anyone was a CFO who had on his primary dashboard the amount of cash collected QTD. That was it. That was the whole dashboard. And if it would have a color depending on if it was expected, less than expected, or more than expected. And basically clicking on it would take them to other places to dig into where they were doing well, where they were behind. But fundamentally it was just that one big number, and he was obviously focusing on the fourth goal here, which is increased cash flow, and was able to really drive actionability in his organization about that number based on a holistic view of the business. But that was how he wanted. That was the handle he tried to grab onto and did grab onto when he was trying to analyze the business overall. So there's a lot of things you can do here, but the payoff really is in better, faster, more consistent, more confident decisions. So I've seen a lot of companies, everyone has data, everyone analyzes it, and everyone tries to make decisions. I've been in the space for a long time, and depending on kind of where you are in the process and in your sophistication as an organization, I've kind of seen primarily there are 4 stages. And we'll talk a little bit about each of them here in terms of the sophistication, their ability to do that. First step, you have to be able to do this to run your business at all. Fundamentally, you need some sort of FP&A process where you have some sort of at least financial information. It may or may not be augmented by operational data, but most often it's financial information. Any analysis about the business is mostly spreadsheet driven. You're integrating things in workbooks, and you have poor young folks staying up very late doing all kinds of VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and other crazy things. It's a fairly manual process, so you can't do it that often. It's just too expensive from a man-hours standpoint, but it's kind of the baseline. It gives you enough information to have a business and run it. The next level, and this is where I would argue most companies are, is that there's some process automation. That planning process is kind of done annually, but you do quarterly updates. So you're looking at how you're doing and doing spot checks and adjustments mid-year in flight. In most cases, some of your operational systems are going to be produce fairly usable reports for that system. You're not necessarily going to have the view across the organization, but you will be able to see in your ERP system some basic reports that tell you how things are going there. You'll have some basic reports in your CRM system where you can see kind of what's going on there. There's going to be a mix of automated reports from those systems, and there's going to be a bunch of manual reports that kind of stitch together some of the more important pieces. So you can see a little bit of how the company is operating as a whole. Most folks, I've touched in my career have been somewhere in here, right? There's some automated reporting in some of the core systems. There's a lot of spreadsheet work to try to do anything above and beyond those core pieces. And this is pretty, you're relatively functional as a business. You're able to make Decisions that may not be as fast as you want. They may not, when you're looking holistically, it's not going to be able to be as comprehensive as you want. It takes longer to analyze things. Everything's a special project. But you can, in fact, do okay here. You can actually do pretty well. The level that people are looking to go to in most of the organizations we deal with, fundamentally going to some pretty high levels of automation in the different departments in terms of analyzing what's going on there. The FP&A process has become automated enough that it can be kind of a monthly check-in. You're doing a kind of a month close, checking how you're doing. Management's able to see how they're doing. They're able to read, react, make responses on the fly on more of a monthly manner as opposed to a quarterly one. You're starting to get some integrated insight into, CRM and your ERP system are kind of the two that most people focus on bringing together, seeing what's coming down the pike and then seeing what's going out the back and getting some sense of the back office can see what the front office has coming towards them. And the front office can see where the back office is ready to do stuff and what they've done. And you're just starting to get kind of a more holistic view in place. You're starting to see some emergence of, top-level metrics for the organization, a couple of things that really matter. And you've got some agreement on the management team, at least to what a few of those are. It's not quite as departmental. It's not quite as Excel-based. You're getting more towards a system that's going to allow you to really read and react dynamically. There's still a lot of manual effort involved here in a lot of cases, but you're starting to see the business think about and talk about things a little bit differently and more holistically. The last level, and we certainly work with folks who get here once they've got the right infrastructure in place, but fundamentally they've got real automation in all the departmental systems. They've got an integrated corporate view in place. They have dashboards and ways to interact with that corporate view. It's not a manual process at all. They're able to interact and see it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. The data is timely. It's accurate. You've got pretty broad agreement on not only the top 2 or 3 KPIs, but some of the most important drivers of those KPIs. And you're starting to be able to manage the business very proactively. You're not looking through the rearview mirror. You're actually able to see what's happening right now and on a scale and a scope, and you're able to dig into things and slice and dice and interact with the data in a manner where you're actually able to make decisions pretty dynamically and quickly. So at least this is, we all recognize ourselves somewhere on the spectrum. This is at least how I've seen kind of companies move forward. And I believe this takes us to our second polling question. So I'll turn it back over to John.
Great, thank you. Actually, unfortunately, I've seen too many companies that are even below your baseline, but it's nice to have a very positive view of the baseline there, Paul. Next up is our second polling question. And once again, if you're here for CPE credit, please take this. And even if you're not, give us 10 seconds and throw your 2 cents in here. Another reminder to folks, please ask questions as we go. And we'll do our best to get to them when we get to the Q&A period at the end of Paul's slides here. I'll leave this open for another 10 seconds or so. Also, just as a reminder for folks who joined us a little late, soft copies of today's presentation are already out on Performative and freely available. If you go to performative.com/resources, it will be the top item there. And we will follow up with an email tomorrow that will have a link to that soft copy. All right, at this point, I'll go ahead and close that down. Paul, why don't you go ahead and continue on?
Thank you, John. So the real question in a lot of organizations is, assuming you want to go up and to the right, to be able to make better decisions, to be able to respond more quickly to market forces, environment changes, business problems, challenges, issues, be able to spot best practices more quickly in your organization so you can replicate them. There's a kind of a natural vacuum because that's not the sort of thing that a CEO usually picks up and runs with. And you've got a whole bunch of other departments that clearly have a stake in this and have a say. Certainly this is not the kind of thinking that marketing typically is known for. Sales certainly is not going to have the kind of mindset in general to be able to pick up something of this magnitude, and certainly having a holistic view of the business is not necessarily sales' traditional strength. Operations is a place where you can see this kind of mindset if they're responsible for delivering against things, and they do often own the back end of the business. They tend not to have enough of a view of the front of the business to be able to really pull this off. The natural place, because again, this is half a business problem and half a technology problem. I would actually argue in terms of value to the company, it's 80% business and 20% technical. But in terms of the work involved, it's about 50-50. Finance is the one organization that really is tasked with looking across the business, understanding what the data means, what numbers mean, how they translate into things you can do in the business. Really often has a stake in the accuracy of the numbers, certifying the numbers to a certain extent. They all often own kind of the business forecast. They may not own the sales forecast, but they own the business forecast. They own the budgeting process. They already talk with all the departments. They already have some of that holistic view baked in there. And as an even better, bigger bonus, about half the time, IT rolls up to finance, so the other half of the effort is already controlled by finance. So finance would have not only the mindset, the skill set, and the relationships to be able to pull off leading the charge here. It often also has the resources required to do so. So, for me, it's a no-brainer. Finance is the place where organizations need to be thinking about how we're going to move up this evolutionary curve and get faster, get better, get smarter, and it's kind of a natural thing to do. There's a number of things that I think that does for finance. It certainly drives a much deeper partnership with finance and the different kind of business departments. Looking at how you're going to interact with them, being able to ask the tough questions. Okay, our business says we're going to be able to, we're going to want to drive 10% growth next year. How are you really going to do that? Can you really deliver this number of leads? Can you really do that on that amount of money that you're saying? And really getting folks, to think about and look at the operational data that says they can or can't do some of these things, instead of just saying, hey, we'll do last year plus 20% and just hope that it all magically works out, right? Finance kind of has that mindset, and it does change the relationship and makes it a much deeper partnership with the business units. It certainly makes finance more strategic for the firm, makes finance not only, an important confidant of the CEO, but makes it really a strategic advisor in terms of how growth and results are going to be driven and delivered. So it's a very real and powerful role that I think finance can really step up to with this. And fundamentally changing the relationship in a lot of companies from finance to the other organizations. So I think there's a big career win, big departmental win by picking up this flag and taking on this challenge. So how do you do this? There's fundamentally a number of things you're going to have to think about. If finance is going to pick up the flag, there are a number of things you need to know, and certainly some best practices I'm going to share with you. Fundamentally, and this is one of the core pieces that you just have to know going into this for you to be able to pull this off well, is analytics are evolutionary. Fundamentally, how you're going to analyze your business, how you're going to look at your business is going to change with a number of factors, right? Certainly as the business environment changes, the way the things that are important to you, the things you're going to be paying attention to, the things you're going to be focused on managing and driving are going to change, right? So your analytics, therefore, are going to change. So if you're trying to make different decisions and you're watching different things, your analytics have to reflect that. Another piece, and this is kind of interesting, is as you start to analyze and understand your business, as you learn about your business, the questions you're going to ask are going to change. You may think, hey, we have a problem over here. It looks like it's this. And you look into it, well, actually, it's not that. It's this other thing right next door. And we got to analyze that. And as you dig deeper and deeper, you're going to find that those questions kind of change. The more you know, the different, the more sophisticated, which is the next point, and the more different your questions are going to be. So you're going to be able to kind of learn. You're going to need to be able to learn and adapt and change how you're looking at your business, change how you're thinking about your business, and how you talk about it is going to change too. This is the irresistible force. You have to embrace this if you're going to lead this charge. It is going to iterate and evolve. And as long as you understand that, there are a number of things you can do to ready yourself on this effort for this. There's not, there are not the 5 magic reports that once we deliver will be done and we have all the insight we'll ever need. That's a fallacy. You'll never get there. So if it's evolutionary, how are you going to do this in a manner that's going to really succeed? We work with a number of companies. The places where we've seen people have the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time is fundamentally breaking it into phases. You start small, you expand over time, and expansion can be, hey, we're analyzing new data sources. It could be we're delivering the same insight to a new community. Maybe we are giving marketing insight, and then we're going to do another phase that we deliver it to sales. It could be, any number one of those things, and it could just be I'm going to analyze this data slightly differently, right? As you're expanding, the other thing you have to keep in mind is as your business community uses it, as they make decisions, as they learn what's valuable, as they learn what's not, you need to be ready to listen to them and get their feedback and dynamically roll it back in. In general, with most of our customers, 1 year, 2 years in, if they've got about 50% of what they originally built still in place, you're doing well. You do really well on that initial piece. If you've got 100% of those initial reports, you've got problems, and if you've got 0%, you've got problems. But there should be some meaningful percent that's still in place. But all around it, things are changing, and you need to be able to capture what that feedback is and then deliver against it. So you need to set yourself up to have a conversation with the other departments about what they need and how you're going to drive things forward. Now that's all well and good, but what's a phase? How do I even do that? The things that I've seen in my career make kind of a good definition for a phase, a unit of work that you're going to do to try to get the first thing up and going. The first thing, in general, the first question you really need to be asking is, hey, what process or metric am I really trying to improve? And it could be, cash. It could be revenue. It could be leads. It could be profit's a tough one to pick first, but you could do profit because profit's really comprised of multiple different things. Could be expenses. Could be something, but pick something that matters. Think about who in your organization can kind of impact that metric, and then think about the data they need to drive it. And obviously, you want that data to be, ideally initially from one source, but as you augment that and add other sources to it, new phases become available. So if you can think about kind of a business, a tactical, could be strategic, but a valuable business objective, a user community that can support it, and then what data they need to actually impact it, you're going to be able to come up with kind of a more natural phasing. So these are the questions we ask when we're engaging with one of our clients to help them kind of think through what's phase one, what's phase two, how do we roll this out over time. It's nice to start small and iterate, but how do I do that? These are the questions we ask. While you're doing that, the goal you have to keep in mind is you're really trying to drive better business results. So picking that metric, that top-level thing you're going to try to drive is the most important piece. You want to be able to, while analyzing things that will help drive that metric, you're trying to just manage the business more effectively, give people insight they can actually make decisions on, change their behavior on, go right or left on, and you're trying to give them that information in a manner where they can respond quickly to issues and fundamentally just make better decisions about how you're managing that portion of your business. Also, another nice thing to say, how the heck do you do that? Well, the way that we think about it, certainly I've approached it this way for many years, is fundamentally you want to be focusing on driving results that matter and decisions that matter towards those results, and we'll call that actionable analytics, things you can do. And how do you do this? And this is kind of the thought process, the layers of questions as you're talking with folks and trying to figure out how you're going to analyze your business better. Find a metric that matters. Again, pick a big one. Could be revenue, could be cash, could be customer sat, could be anything. Then you've got to think about those things that drive that metric. So for instance, cash obviously is driven by days sales outstanding, payroll, AP, and looking at how each of those things, providing those operational metrics that feed into your total cash number at the end of the day. Obviously, you have to be able to monitor cash itself. And once you have those driver metrics, you need to think about what actions people take, that can drive those measures. So for instance, DSO is going to be driven by collections, right? So looking at decisions you can make that would drive DSO down, which would therefore drive cash up, top overdue invoices, top places where if you just got a simple switch to ACH or some other automated payment system instead of paper checks would actually make a difference. Places where you've got just long payment terms for big dollars. And giving people in your kind of finance and collections department the type of insight where they can see, okay, who's overdue now, who's not, where do we want to focus our time in terms of restructuring the relationship, what actions can they take that will drive DSO down and therefore cash up. But it's really getting down to, top-level metric, what drives that metric, and then what actions can we take to improve those drivers. So there's kind of a three-layer cake there. And while you're thinking that through, obviously, the people that are making those decisions at those different levels, who impacts those metrics, who does these things, you need to be, at the end of the day, if you know who they are, you know what the action options available to them are, the key question you're going to have to ask to actually make this fly in your organization and make it the success that it could and should be, is investing in the training they need, right? How are they going to do this? How are we going to teach them to do this? What's easy for them? How are we going to make sure that they know what decisions to make in which cases, and how do we do these things so that they're making the right decisions on the margin as they see this information? Because if you give information to people to them, they don't know what decision to make, they don't know what action to take, they don't know they might not even know the right one to do. You need to make sure that you're training them and getting them to make those decisions. That's where you get the actual, the actual impact at the end of the day. So, again, you want to start small and iterate here. This is, I can't emphasize this enough. If you go into a huge project and you're going to try to waterfall it out, and it's going to be 12 to 24 months, you're going to have problems because your business will be different 12 to 24 months from now. You keep it small. You deliver something. You phase it out using the approach that we've done, and you kind of iterate. You add. You make it more dynamic. If you're doing things more quickly, you're going to be able to drive more business results. And this is kind of shown on this slide. In general, your need to analyze your business are going to grow over time. The requirements that you have to be able to make better decisions in your organization are going to grow and change and evolve over time. If you do kind of the old school waterfall, it's going to be at least 9 months, as many as 18 or 24 in some cases, before I have anything. Your requirements will have changed, I guarantee it, by the time you get there. And if every 6 months after that you're going to iterate, it's going to be very hard to keep up with the pace of business. The approach that we advocate in this, kind of start small, iterate, what does that mean? Fundamentally, you should be thinking about, every 2 to 3 months I've got something new. I'm able to change what I'm doing. I'm able to add new sources. I'm able to deploy to new departments. I'm able to do things. You'll be able to get a lot farther, a lot faster, and be able to actually catch up with your business requirements over time. It's a pretty powerful approach. And obviously, every better decision you make in that intervening time is going to help you drive business value if you've aligned those decisions around drivers that will then push top-level metrics for you. So there's a lot of business value to be had by taking a much more agile approach to this, a more iterative, smaller phased approach to this. So here's an example of the type of thing that could be helpful if you're looking at, in this case, how your business is doing. There's kind of a gap where you are behind for the current quarter. Would be interesting to see, okay, well, if looks like I'm going to be behind this quarter, how's my pipeline evolving? What's changed in the last little bit here? In this case, the waterfall, I don't know if you can see my mouse as I move it here, but the waterfall, and these are the things that this is our starting pipeline. These are the things that we've done to add to the pipeline over this period of time, and these are the things that have pulled pipeline out. Obviously, I've ended up with less pipeline than I would like. Obviously, being able to then look at, well, what's driven my pipeline, how am I creating pipeline, what's happening there. In this case, lead volume is down. You can look at, which is obviously leading to fewer opportunities. If you look here, seeing those areas where you are driving the most leads over time, getting some sense of, maybe the sales leads are low this quarter. I need to be talking to our sales force about driving kind of a calling campaign internally to drum up more pipelines so we can make sure we hit our business. I can take action now, 2 months before the end of the quarter, instead of, at the end of the quarter finding out I was short. So it can be relatively powerful in terms of helping you find and address kind of both tactical and strategic challenges in flight as you go, instead of waiting till you get the results at the end of the quarter or the end of the year that tell you missed, right? Much better to know when you still have some time to do something about it. So a quick case study in terms of how powerful this can be for an organization. Citrix has a hardware business. They actually do quite a bit of business through there. It's many hundreds of millions of dollars. They were struggling with tying their front office information and back office information so sales could sell what was kind of lying around in inventory, and so the delivery folks could deliver what was coming down the pipe in the pipeline, so they could actually see ahead. So they had a number of things where there was some, obviously financial wastage if you don't have that aligned very well. The CEO basically mandated that they optimize their performance. They spent 15 months in a big BI deployment internally. They obviously were managing everything with Excel. They were doing 30+ Excel reports that were taped up on a conference room wall every day. And that was how they managed their business. That was the best they could do. But they really wanted a way to kind of do this in a more automated and interactive way. So they went to a far more agile approach with a more dynamic platform, ours specifically, but there are other ways to do this. They went in and got something small and up quick with some quick extracts from Salesforce, some quick extracts from SAP. They were quickly able to get kind of that combined pipeline inventory and revenue data going. They were able to deploy it to people in the field, and right away their on-time delivery rate soared, their inventory turn soared. So they were getting obviously a lot more inventory drop, so their turns went up. It was a real profit driver for them and definitely improved their gross margins, all by picking that nice small targeted app. They've expanded this many-fold. They now have a very vast and sweeping deployment that covers data pretty much from all over their business. They're deploying it to themselves, their suppliers. They've got everyone in their organization kind of aligned on this and making better decisions together. So the organization's moving, very quickly here. So the impact, even starting small, you can drive a big impact pretty quickly if you pick the right things. And they definitely did a good job of that, and they've been moving very quickly since to kind of iterate, move, grow, and keep up with their business requirements. So hopefully that gives you some sense of kind of the overall challenge, some of the key components of that challenge, at least how we and I would certainly recommend you get through them, and the opportunity that presents to you as a finance professional in your organization, in your career. I'd love to turn it back over to John at this point and to you folks for questions and hear what you guys are curious about, and hopefully shed a little more light on areas that are of interest to you. But before we do that, let's do the last polling question. John.
Great. Thanks, Paul. A lot of great information there and a good roadmap. I'm sure we're going to get deeper into that roadmap as we get into Q&A. I'm launching the third and final poll question here. So once again, just take 10 seconds, take a peek at this, and we will actually revisit the poll questions as soon as we're done with this, and then we'll get to your questions. Reminder once again, if you have any questions for Paul, please feel free to ask them in the question area of your GoToWebinar control panel. And we will get there in one moment. I'm going to go ahead and give you another 5 seconds to answer this question, and then we'll hop right back and go to the first poll question and see what we had there. All right, so I'm going to close this one right now, and let's go back and start at the beginning. I can see these results before you, Kevin. It's kind of funny looking at this first one. So a reminder, how does your organization deliver business insight to decision makers today? And good grief, Excel or Microsoft Access. I'm sure 90% of that plus is Excel. Paul, typical?
Very. I mean, Excel is the classic way to take data from multiple places, smash it into a format where it can be crudely hammered together and then analyzed. It's exceedingly flexible. The people who know how to use Excel are plentiful. It's a the easiest way to just kind of throw a body at it. I'm a little surprised that traditional BI tools is as low as it is. Pleased that the SaaS BI tools are about 20% of the traditional BI tools there. So I'm not surprised Excel is number one. I'm surprised it's 80% instead of 60 to 70. But
well, maybe that's why folks are here today, because they need something else. Now, it's interesting. Recently, I was on a webinar on a very different subject, but we were talking about Excel as a tool, and I mentioned that in my company we use a whole host of cloud technologies to get ourselves off of Excel. And I had a couple, sort of indignant folks saying, well, what's bad about Excel? And I said, well, nothing bad about Excel. It just gets overused in some instances. But well, what do you say to that when folks are like, hey, I like my Excel. What's wrong with that?
Yep, and believe me, I know all the keystroke shortcuts myself. It is a great tool. There are a couple challenges in using it for kind of a more systematic process where you're trying to take data and turn it into insight. That's kind of a manufacturing process. Excel is very manual. Even if you macro the heck out of it, there's a lot of opportunities for humans to use a technical term, screw it up. It's hard to get trending. It's hard to slice and dice things. It's hard, you're doing pivot tables, and there can be a lot of challenges around it. So in general, and you're looking at, a snapshot right now, and if you want to see what things look like a month ago, you've got to go find that email with the spreadsheet thing from then, and then look at the two and try to compare them, and they tend to end up in wall of numbers reports, which isn't as graphical and easy to absorb. So it does a very good job. It is exceedingly flexible. It is, the first thing you can do in a lot of areas to get some analysis in, but the manual effort required, the errors that can result, the challenge in kind of time traveling and seeing what trends are, the interactivity of Excel, for a lot of business users is not very high. So there's just a lot of things where it's a good first pass, but it's not where you ultimately want to be.
Okay, so that's the defense of using Excel, and some great reasons to not use Excel, not rely on Excel everywhere. So let's go ahead and hop into the second poll question. And that's coming up in a second. Okay, how mature is your organization? And that was along the continuum that you had presented earlier, baseline, functional, emerging, and industry leading. That probably almost looks like a normal curve right there. What do you think, Paul?
This actually is very comparable to kind of my experience in dealing with companies. So this is definitely a representative set in terms of how people are thinking about analyzing their business and how they're trying to move forward. I mean, this is almost spot on with what I would have expected.
Okay. And then we want to get a little more insight into why folks are here, what's their interest in BI, and what do you think about what you see?
Let's see. I'm a little surprised that need a basic BI education is as high as it is, but I'm totally biased. I've been in the space for a long time. It's hard for me to pull myself out of that. Mm-hmm. But the struggles that people have that typically drive them to want that basic BI education are the other ones, right? Like it takes my company too much time to do basic analysis. If you're doing manual polls, getting IT to write a query, dumping the spreadsheet, figuring out how to do it, that just takes too much time. And how to get useful data, right? That's that turning data into insight. That's the business challenge, right? So I see both of the primary blockers for folks. I would suspect if you double-clicked on the why they need the basic BI education, you'd see the other answers in place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So that's a quick look back at the polling questions. Let's go ahead and hop into Q&A at this point. We've got a number of questions queued up, and feel free to continue on if you have more as we go. A great one for starters, which is, does a company have to identify what the total system solution is before taking small steps along the path?
I would argue no. You do need to know what tools you're picking. The primary piece, because there's such a big data manufacturing process as part of this, turning that data into insight, is a technical process you're going to need to be able to figure out as you're thinking about how you're going to take that and make it more business impactful, you need to be looking at that supply chain. And in general, the traditional solutions are you buy a whole fleet of different products, and as you engage with IT, you're going to need to have some sense of what that is, because the decisions you make on that data pipeline are going to change very radically how your business users can consume and how fast you can go. So you don't need to. Excel is the first step. That you don't have to pick a tool, but once you start thinking about kind of automating that information chain, you will need to pick a technology approach for that.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned IT, and of course there are BI tools that are on-premise, there are BI tools that are hosted in the cloud, the whole spectrum, and I imagine there's a varying degree of IT required for these, but I guess in virtually every instance you have to plumb your current systems to pull data out. How important is IT's role, and how should the finance and accounting folks online here think about approaching those people and attacking the problem of better analytics?
Yep. In most cases, even if you do have, Salesforce or another CRM system in the cloud, some folks are starting to move kind of ERP and back office to the cloud. So you're starting to see more places where IT isn't absolutely 100% required to get data out of those systems. Fundamentally, they tend to be the ones who understand, for the systems they're responsible for, they understand the data very well. So they're going to have a seat at this table. If you're going to be doing BI on-premise, obviously they have a huge seat. If you're going to be doing BI in the cloud, they still have a seat, but it's probably not the same kind of central role. They're not going to be running the servers where this is run. They're going to be kind of supporting and augmenting it primarily via getting data out of the other systems and into this one. So you see kind of business leading the charge a little bit more when it's in the cloud, and you see IT playing a much bigger role when it's going to be on-prem.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier, you gave an example, actually, a funny aside about the CFO whose dashboard was one item, which was cash, essentially cash inflow. I think it was, we actually have a question around cash flow. What have you seen folks focus on with analytics tools, dashboards that really help them drive improved cash flow? Can you give any examples?
Yep. In most cases, you're going to be looking at stretching out your payables and shrinking your DSO. Looking at those two things, if you are a physical goods manufacturer, obviously inventory and WIP are two huge cash sucks. So in general, looking in those three areas are going to be the best three ways to drive cash. Those are the common things people look at. Obviously, in the case of the Citrix example, inventory and WIP was a big number. They were able to cut it, almost to 20%, which freed up a lot of cash.
Now, I can already hear folks saying, well, those numbers, by inventory balance, I can look at my balance sheet any day, or at least in whatever periodicity that we track our inventory, and see exactly what my inventory balance is. So how is BI going to help me with that again?
Well, again, looking at the total inventory isn't necessarily going to be the most actionable piece. Looking at inventory by product line and being able to match that up against pipeline by product line, seeing how many days of sales of each of these products you have is going to help you make kind of better decisions. So if the back office can see kind of more at the product level what's likely to be sold, they'll be able to build the right amount. And if you can get kind of the front office looking at where you have inventory, if getting the customer to pick this slightly different product means I ship tomorrow as opposed to 3 months from now, being able to kind of see that is pretty helpful. So it's not total inventory, not that actionable. Inventory by product, when you blend it with other information, very actionable.
And I would also imagine that there's probably something to do with visibility and broadening visibility greatly. Financial reports, are seen by the finance and accounting departments and maybe once a month by the executive staff. But how much easier is it to get actionable financial data out to everyone who needs it when you're using a non-financial platform?
Using, in general, a BI platform is going to be accessible to pretty much everyone in the company, and they all have data visibility restrictions so that, a sales rep logging in is not going to see the same thing that the CEO does. So they're able to kind of have fine-grained control over who gets to see what. But the BI platforms are fundamentally distribution. They are meant to provide insight to broad numbers of people. So it's a lot easier. You don't have to give them, the keys to the financial system for them to see it. It allows them to see their data. If I'm in sales, I can see the CRM data plus the finance data, which is awesome. If I'm in finance, I can see the finance data plus the sales data, which is awesome. If I'm in marketing, I can see marketing, sales, and finance, and that's, so being able to provide folks the visibility they need to the other parts of the org as well as their own is a pretty powerful thing.
Right. Now, how do companies typically start down this path? Do you need to find an SI or a consultant, or how do most people find their way to you, for instance?
For us, we have a lot of folks come directly to us. We approach the problem in kind of a unique way that makes it a lot lighter of a lift, frankly. In general, if your organization doesn't have people who kind of understand data and analysis, you're going to need to have them. If you don't have them, you have to go to an SI. If you do, and perhaps you're lacking technical skill to do some of this stuff, you can also engage an SI. Or you can actually, in those cases, you can engage with an organization like ours and use, we all have professional services organizations who can help you both on the business and the technical side, but we can't answer your business questions for you, right? So you must have business expertise in-house. If you don't, get the SI. If you do have business expertise in-house, you have more options available to you. You can go direct to the vendor to get the technical skills, or you can engage an SI.
And how quickly, if you're using the Agile process, which is, I guess, taking smaller bites and maybe more of them, how quickly can a company expect to get up and running?
Most of our customers have something up, 2 to 4 months. We've done them in as little as 10 days and as long as 6 months, depending on how ambitious that first phase is. But in most cases, if you're not up within 90 days, something's, you either designed a phase a little bit too big or something's a little bit off. But, 90 days is a pretty good benchmark.
Gotcha. Are there any reasons folks wouldn't be able to plug in BI? Like, is there such thing as a wrong ERP or accounting system, or anything within your existing people, processes, and technology that would get in the way?
Yep. The fundamentally, as long as whatever systems you're using can produce data in table form, rows and columns, any BI system can take it in. The harder parts are having people who understand kind of what that data means from a business perspective internally. And again, this is where finance shines.
Right.
So that's the bigger challenge.
Gotcha. Great. Well, wonderful. At this point, I'd like to close down the Q&A so that we can make sure we close down the webinar on time and get everyone back to work in a timely fashion. First off, Paul, thank you very much. That was a great lesson, series of lessons, and great insight into analytics and BI, and I think a lot of actionable information. So thanks so much for joining us this morning.
All right. Well, thank you very much, John, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Next up, a couple of quick housekeeping items. When we end this webinar in 1 minute, you'll be prompted to take a short survey. We greatly appreciate your feedback. We also make it very simple. If you want to connect with Paul, it's just a mouse click away, and we'll go ahead and help broker that connection, which we're happy to do. Also, you can see Tanya Walsh's email address here. If you have any questions at all about CPE credit, please feel free to ping Tanya. Finally, thanks again to Burst for sponsoring this morning's webinar and having Paul on as a speaker. That was wonderful information. And Paul, we look forward to having you on again. And to everyone who joined us this morning, thanks so much. And we hope to see you again either online or at another Performative event. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.